And Shailendra, the team lead, unfortunately, he couldn't be here because he's infected with COVID right now and he's on rest. But yeah, I look forward to the presentation, and then I look forward to have the discussion as well. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, Miruz.
Great. Is Rupa going to share the slides?
Yeah, Shrupaji.
Yeah, sure.
So if you could just share the slides, and then you can start the presentation. Also, I've mentioned in the chat box, but please note that this presentation is being recorded. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat box.
All right, great. Rupaji, all right. So
is the slides visible?
Yeah.
Can you all see them? Yeah.
Yes, we can see them. Thank you.
So just before we begin, before the Endline presentation, just like to give a short background of ESTEEM. I think most of the GC staff are aware about ESTEEM because we've worked in so many GC projects before, but just a short one. So ESTEEM has been in the development field for about 2 decades now. We are a development consultant agency based in Kathmandu, Nepal. We work around areas including education, health, disaster, governance, etc. And in the past 20 years, we've had the opportunity to evaluate for about 100 plus projects. We've covered about 70 districts across Nepal out of the 77 districts. And in regards to GEC projects, we've evaluated STEM 1s. We recently finished evaluating STEM 2. And some components of Sister for Sister 1 as well, the Endline, and then the Sister for Sister 2 evaluation. We've also undertaken evaluation for DFID's LNGP projects in Nepal implemented by PIN and BSO, the Engage project. So I think we can proceed with the presentation. Rupaji, over to you.
Thank you, Abhijit. I'd like to start with a brief background of the project, since this is the second phase of the project. This phase of the project was a successive phase of the first phase, which was conducted between 2013 and 2017. The achievements of the first phase of the project, which took an iterative model to the increase girls' access to and utilization of formal and non-formal education. Based on this, the second phase of the project was also conducted among 49 schools of 4 districts of Nepal, namely Lamjung, Gading, Porsa, and Surkhet, where 17,220 adults and girls were targeted. And this, the second phase of the project was funded by the FCDO's Girls Education Challenge and implemented by VSO and British Council as a resource partner and Mercy Corp as the technical partner. And the whole project was guided by the theory of change, which states that inequality in education and learning achievement gaps can be addressed by assuring equitable access to quality learning and skills. So based on this, the second phase of the project was carried between 2017 and 21. These are the activities, major activities, which took place in the second phase of the project, and most of these are a continuation of the first phase as well. The Big Sister mentoring scheme, which is a major accomplishment and a highlight of this second phase of the project. In the second phase, there were around 1,237 little sisters and roughly about 320 big sisters. So for every 3 to 4 little sisters, 1 big sister was assigned for the mentoring purpose. And second highlight of the this phase of the project is the learning support classes, which was highly
Rupaji, I think we've lost you. Hello, can you hear us? Rupaji, I think we seem to have lost you. I'll just check with her.
Hello. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, but you couldn't hear me earlier.
Yeah, we've lost you. We lost you for a bit. I think, yeah, we can hear you back. So yeah, you can
Oh,
continue.
I'm so sorry about that. As I was saying, the learning support classes, which were another major highlight of this phase, was much appreciated among the girls. Additional classes for girls, along with the little sisters, was conducted at school on core subjects like English, math, and science. Since these subjects are considered to be the tough subjects among students here in Nepal, and also the subjects where students perform the weakest. Another highlight is the infrastructural support. The project extended their support in the treatment schools to building model classrooms and libraries also. And teachers' trainings were conducted on various subject matters like learner-centered approaches and sexual and reproductive health, ICTs, to make the classroom learning more interactive. And after the COVID pandemic, teachers were also given psychosocial counseling trainings and first aid, to name a few. And digital and English classes. Edge clubs were operating lessons on English language proficiency and enhance digital skills by tablets and laptops, which were the major attraction for the girls. And awareness activities. This took place at the community level, where activities such as door-to-door campaign and street dramas were conducted, where the importance of girl education was highlighted among the community members. And lastly, since the onset of the pandemic, during which time the project activities were halted, COVID preventive kits such as masks, sanitizers, and thermal guns were distributed among the treatment schools, along with sanitary napkins and establishment of hand washing kits, hand washing stations at the treatment schools. Talking about the methodology, Endline data was collected. Endline data collection was commissioned between December 2020 and January 2021, where a longitudinal study was conducted that adopted a sequential mixed method design. But owing to the restrictions caused by the pandemic, quantitative data were remotely collected only in treatment schools, where treatment schools where 429 household surveys were done and 549 girl surveys were conducted.
Rupa, we lost you again.
Hello?
Yeah, Rupaji, you're back, but we lost you for a while in between.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah, you can proceed.
What was the last thing you heard?
The COVID-19 quantitative data was collected remotely.
Oh, okay. While the quantitative data were collected only from the treatment schools, and the qualitative data were also collected from among these treatment schools, where 56 FTDs and 48 KIs were conducted among teachers, parents, little sisters, non-little sisters, Edge Club members, municipal education officers. Yeah.
Rupaji, I think we seem to have lost you again. I think there's some issue with the mic rather than the internet. Rupaji, can you hear us? Hello? Hello? Rupaji, we lost you again in between.
Hi. Hi. Hello.
Yeah, we lost you in between. I think there's some issue with the mic rather than the internet because the slides are shifting. It's just that we can't hear your voice at times.
Sorry about that again. I don't know what's happening today. As I was saying, regarding the evaluation questions, at the outcome level, evaluation questions were developed based on three components, namely of learning, transition, and sustainability. In terms of learning, in the Endline, the assessment was more towards assessing the perceived learning among the girls and the parents since the midline, and the standardized learning assessment test, namely the SEGRA and SEGMA, was deemed unusable because of the COVID circumstances, and also because the project targets had already been met during the midline. In terms of the transition pathway of the in-school girls were measured in the Endline, while out-of-school girls were not involved in the Endline because during the midline assessment itself, 60% attrition were witnessed among this cohort of girls, and it would be very challenging for the evaluators to trace back the same girls. And also because the intervention plan for the out-of-school girls could not be carried due to COVID and other project reasons. And in terms of sustainability, during the midline, while the assessment had got sustainability at 3 levels, community, schools, and government, the Endline assessment, and at the Endline assessment, the aspect of sustainability was assessed only at 2 levels, that is at the school and the government level. And the focus was centered in assessing the transfer of ownership to the local government and replicability of the project activities. Here, it should be noted that schools here are highly dependent on the local government. Therefore, sustainability and replicability of the project activities might only be successful if the local governments take the ownership. So the questions were designed to see to what extent has a project been able to leverage additional interest, investment, and policy changes and transfer ownership of its achievement and activities to the local and provincial government, and how replicable is the project activities for adoption in another similar context. And in terms of intermediate outcomes, assessment relating to self-esteem and empowerment, parental engagement, teaching quality, and school management were done in the Endline. The outcome relating to the attendance was deemed unusable because schools were closed for a long time, as long as 8 to 9 months in some schools. So that was omitted during the Endline. And in terms of the self-esteem, since boosting self-esteem of the girls is a major component of the project theory of change, questions relating to the change in girls' involvement in decision-making process were developed. The questions were more about what changes can be observed in terms of the girls' involvement in decision-making processes within the family in matters concerning them and their future, and in terms of parental parental engagement, assessment was related to more observed changes among community members and parents in regard to their involvement in girls' education, like how often do the parents visit the school or meet the teachers to inquire about the daughter's performance, or how much do the community members hold a belief in the traditional activities like menstrual exiles, and how are the changes occurring, and therefore our questions such as what changes can be observed among the community members and parents in regard to their involvement in the girls' education, and the amount of time girls spend on household chores. These issues were explored under the parental engagement. And in terms of teaching quality and school management, assessment was done on the basis of observed changes in teachers' teaching technique, along with the development of child-friendly environment and gender-responsive management at the school level. In addition to these questions based on the outcome and intermediate outcomes, additional circumstances questions related to the challenges created by the COVID-19 were also included in the Endline assessment. Prior to that, it should be noted that in Nepal, a countrywide lockdown was came into effect from March 2020, and since then schools were shut down for 2 to 9 months in many across the districts, depending upon the situation. And in the meantime, a guideline for reopening schools were issued by the Ministry of Education of Nepal, where the local government could take the decision regarding reopening or keeping the school closed based on risk assessment involved for COVID transmission, as schools were often used as quarantine or isolation center. So under these circumstances, we asked if and how resilient were the treatment schools to avoid COVID in the pandemic, and what adaptive measures did the project employ as a response to the pandemic, and what outcomes were observed as a result. And if and how has the treatment school been able to provide services of child protection and gender-based violence to the children within the community? And lastly, what efforts have the teacher made to support the students, especially the girls, in their education and well-being during the pandemic? Talking about data collection during the COVID-19 period, as I mentioned earlier, quantitative data was remotely collected, and once it was safe to go out in the community, following all safety measures, qualitative data collection was conducted, where physical distances were maintained during the FGTs and the KIIs. The research team was provided with masks, gloves, and sanitizers, and research followed the quarantine protocol, and were in quarantine after returning to Kathmandu from field on completion of the work. Talking about the learnings of the Endline evaluation, the first component of this assessment is the learning. In the midline evaluation, the project had achieved the literacy target by 98.43% and the numeracy target by 220.49%. The difference between the treatment and the control group was 11.56 for numeracy and 4.70% for literacy, both of which are statistically significant achievements. So considering this achievement during the midline, which had already surpassed the project target, and the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, where schools were closed for a long time and it was not feasible to get in contact with people physically, a learning assessment was revised in the Endline towards measuring girls' perception towards learning improvement since the last 2 years. And from the quantitative data, it was known that 78.7% of the girls had witnessed improvement in learning performances, and much of this improvement were seen in terms of their examination score rather than their interest to learn, classroom participation, and in terms of lesson comprehension. Though these areas also saw increase since the midline. And when analyzing the underlying causes behind such changes, it was known from the qualitative consultation that mentoring provided by the big sisters and the support through learning support classes were the main factors. There is an instance where the little sister shared how the big sisters from one of the project district shared how the big sisters had helped them with their assignments when they were unable to do, or how the big sisters constantly inquired about their regularity to schools, just to make sure that they don't miss out on any lesson from schools. And so this big sister and little sister mentorship has a major role in the accomplishments made by the little sisters mostly. And regarding the learning support classes, the girls really appreciated this class because here The core subjects, math, science, and English, were taught. But unlike the regular classes here, the girls got the opportunity to revise the subject matter from the very basic concept without having to worry about finishing the course. And the teachers were very patient, repeating the same thing time and again until they were confident on the subject matters. And increased level of confidence to make inquiry with the teachers. Girls often credit this to the Edge classes. I remember one of the members of the Edge classes saying that she gained confidence after going to the Edge classes, and after being part of it, she could confidently raise questions about raise questions in the class, or raise her hand even before the teachers point to someone to read the content written on the board. But now that the classes had been halted, she felt her confidence diminishing, and even when she knows the answers in the class, she is not really confident answering the subject matters. And in terms of the parental support, parents have been contributing to reducing the girls' engagement in the household chores. Often mothers, they shoulder the girls' responsibility so that the girls have more time to study, and also the parents are willing to invest more, financially invest more in their daughter's education. For instance, in one of the project districts, a father shared how he had migrated to a new community so that he would not be ridiculed for sending his daughter to school, or he aspired to send his daughter to the medical school, for which his family had already started saving, and he shared with us that he even bought a piece of land, which he says he will sell if he needs for his daughter's education in future. And lastly, improved school environment and teaching approach also contributed this improved perceived learning among the girls, where trained teachers were adopting more learner-centered approach and were more respectable to the students, making making classes learning more of fun. But despite having a good number of girls witnessing perceived learning, there's still a large number of girls who said that the pandemic has affected their future aspirations. 82.1% of the girls felt that COVID impacted their future educational aspirations, especially the 10th standard students, where during which they could not attempt the last SEE, secondary education examination, which is often considered a very important examination in Nepal, and based on which based on the result, and students often uptake subjects like, if you score distinction, you get to choose science, or if you get a mediocre score, you get to study management, and so on. So it was a big loss for the 10th grade students, and also students from junior classes, since the school was closed for a long time, and most of them could not take part in the online classes, or those aired from the radios and the television by the government because of lack of devices. They missed learning during this time, and and since they were at home, their involvement in the household chores has also increased. Though even the parents have been sharing the workload to create opportunities for the girls to engage in studies more than the household works. And at school, the Edge classes were disrupted. The students could not physically meet. They had to rely on the radio program that was aired from the local radio stations, and the peer peer group leader mediated the information among the club members, but since they were bereft from the opportunity to practice using the phablets and the laptop, which were the major highlights for these girls, they missed out a lot. And moreover, the frequency of meeting between the big sisters and the little sisters had also reduced during this time, so which is reduced, which also impacted the mentorship program. Moving on with the transition, like I mentioned earlier, transition status of the in-girls were tracked in the Endline and not that of the out-of-school girls. And based on the project data, it was known that 94% of the girls had successful transition. For any girls to have a successful transition, the girls should either opt for continuation of formal education or uptake of vocational or technical skill that would enable them to build a independent future. And the highest successful transition was noted in Bursa, and all in all, 5,550 girls had successful transition till the end of December 2020. And as for the 6% of the unsuccessful transition among girls, marriage was the most cited reason across all project districts, with the highest being in Dhading. From all the qualitative consultations, it was known that self-initiated marriage was increasing than those led by parents, and though most of the those consulted attributed this increasing trend of self-initiated child marriage to the increased means of communication like mobile phones or through various internet sites. A teacher from one of the project districts find this association with poverty explained to the external evaluators to the external evaluator as an attempt by the children to escape the poverty rather than the role of the media. Other than the marriage not being in contact with the school or transferred were other causes. They are mostly among this trend is mostly among the migrant population or labor class of family who often traveled in search of work, and the students missed out on the schools. In terms of sustainability, looking at the child complaint response mechanism, while the assessment done by the project showed that schools were making acceptable progress towards ensuring a fundamental complaint response mechanism, the project found that treatment schools had a complaint response mechanism in place with a complaint box placed at schools, which was frequently opened in presence of the CRM community members formed at schools. But external evaluators found something different than what the project had mentioned, in the respect that the evaluators observed a dysfunctional complaint box stored in a staff room, and even those still intact were placed outside the teacher's staff room, where students would normally refrain from going. And when discussing this with the head teacher, the evaluators were told that students find it comforting to directly reach the teachers in case of problems and posting problems at the complaint box, because they know that the issue at hand will be promptly addressed when said to the teacher, then going through the complaint response mechanism. Likewise, assessing the sustainability of the local government. The project support to the local government in formulating the child protection policy was quite commendable, because the local government lacked the capacity to develop one themselves. And the local government also appeared extremely positive in terms of giving continuity to project activities, specifically the little sister, big sister mentorship, because it is a low-cost activity and one that has been successfully implemented too. And the willingness shown by the big sister to continue also gives continuity into this activity. There was an instance where a big sister said that she was willing to work without any remuneration, also because that would keep her engaged outside of her household chores, and that being a big sister had earned her some respect in the community as well. And in regarding the edge clubs, without the external support, it may not be so sustainable because the schools do not have adequate funds to operate this club, which needs phablets and laptops adequately for the students. So without any external supports, edge clubs aren't likely to survive. And in terms of replicating the other project activities, other than the mentorship program, a limited budget is a huge constraint at the school level. So in terms of assessing of sustainability, the external evaluators find that besides the mentorship program, other activities might be quite unsustainable. Regarding the self-esteem and empowerment, this was measured in terms of the increased percentage of girls taking all the key decision on their own or jointly with the families over the rate of decision made by the family alone. So a set of 7 decision-making areas related to the education and life of girls were presented to the girls and asked who was responsible for making this decision. If you look at the bar graphs on the right side and left, you will see that the orange portions have decreased to an extent, which is to say that the role of family solely taking decision has decreased. However, the changes in these numbers are significant only in case where the girls were asked whether or not you will go to school and how you spend your free time and how often you spend time with your friend. Other than these categories, none of the changes or difference in the change were statistically significant. And in terms of parental engagement, this was measured in terms of the frequency of parents who visited their daughter's school to discuss their progress, and in terms of the amount of time spent by the girls on household chores. From the qualitative consultations, it was known that even though parents rarely visited school to make inquiries about their daughter's progress, they have a sense of awareness and understanding the importance of girls' education, that they are committed to creating a conducive learning environment at home, and the mothers are keen to reducing the household chores for the daughters. They often shoulder their part of the work, mostly because the mothers don't want the girls to be illiterate and face hardship like they once faced, and they often aspire their daughters to uptake a table job, so for them to be able to escape all the household chores and working in the farms and so on. If you look at this graph, you'll see that the hours changes in the hours of in the number of hours the girls are engaged in household chores. Since the baseline till midline, the hours girls engaged in the household chores are decreasing. But since the onset of the COVID, the hours have increased. But it is it's quite natural for of parents to employ their daughters at in household chores, since they're home all day and they're using additional helping hand at work. But even when engaging girls in the household chores, the parents are aware of the need to give ample of time to the girls to study. So without affecting their time to studies, the girls were engaged in the household chores. And 97.2% also say that of the girls also say that their parents support them to stay at school. And like I said, there's a slight increase in the household chores during the lockdown due to the closures of the school. And in terms of the teaching quality, with the ample number of teachers training, the teachers are now using more interactive approaches like more group works or the use of ICT materials in the classrooms. And more importantly, they are using more respective language towards the students, less use of verbal punishment, and the teachers themselves have experienced increased confidence among themselves since taking trainings, and since the trainings are now occurring at school level, the teachers are now able to are more confident about using the locally available resources to teach in class rather than seeking one from outside. So all in all, and the trend of the practice of sharing the learning from the trainings are also intact at schools. So this everything is all contributing to creating a better learning outcome for the school. And in terms of school governments, as external evaluators, we found that the complaint referral mechanism was not so effectively working because, like I said earlier, the complaint boxes were not functional. Were not functional, and the teachers had also cited that since the onset of COVID and after reopening the school, they had not opened the complaint box even once, and decrease verbal and verbal punishment and counseling services are increased because of the development of child protection policy among schools, and skill transfer between teachers. There's a practice of sharing knowledge and skill among teachers. If any of the teachers are taking trainings from within the school or from an outside source, and gender-friendly SIPs are also in better position now that there are separate toilets developed for boys and girls, and sanitary napkins are distributed to girls at free of cost, and a female focal teacher has also been appointed for the girls to share their grievances in case of any. As for assessing the value of money, we thought the mentoring support was highly effective and efficient because the little sisters have benefited much benefited. They often relate to the big sisters as their gurus, their mentors, and the friends who have acted as mediator between the schools and the parents and helped in their educational journey too. And this was highly relevant because big sisters are like around the clock monitors for the little sisters, and monitors who and a mediator between the schools and the families, and highly sustainable too because it is a very low cost activity, and the only cost that takes is the remuneration for the big sisters. Learning support classes are very highly effective and efficient because students are seen doing better in their examinations. Highly relevant because additional classes were given on the core subjects where students were found the weakest. Students often had problems in maths, English, and science. So this was highly relevant, but extremely low in terms of sustainability because without additional remuneration, teachers are not willing to go conduct additional classes for these girls. Teachers training was the effectiveness and efficiency was medium because this was a one-time activity and not a continuous event, because and relevance was low because most of these teachers are government teachers, and there is a provision for these government teachers to take training and pass examination before coming to schools and take a license. So most of these trainings often overlap. And sustainability also low, because once the project phases out, there isn't any there aren't any additional source or additional institution who could continue giving the teachers training or updating or revising on the ones that had already conducted. Parental awareness, effectiveness, and efficiency was deemed medium, because while the parents did seem to have become more aware on the importance of education for girls, especially from among the project district itself, there were parents who said that the girls will be sent to school only till grade 10 because of their community and their ethnic practices. As soon as the girls are done with the grade 10, the girls will be married off, because that's how things are practiced in their community. Relevance is high because more input are still needed to increase parental awareness among reducing child marriages and importance of educating girls. Sustainability medium, because while the parents might keep the takeaway message from the campaigns and share it among themselves or the neighbors, it is not always necessary that they pass on the information, and others also understand the message in the same way. Age clubs, effectiveness and efficiency very high, very relevant in terms of improving the girls' English proficiency and their digital skills, because normally at home these girls cannot afford to have such devices, and the level of teaching of English at the government schools are also quite low. So giving the current English language and the digital skills are highly effective and efficient. Relevancy also very high, which meets the market demands, but extremely low in terms of sustainability, because it's a matter of cost. Without any additional resource, the age club cannot sustain. In terms of giving recommendations, we thought that the coordination between school and the local government is a must to replicate the learning support classes and the age clubs. Since the resources could be channelized from the government to these schools to support the learning support classes and age clubs, and coordination between the schools and local government to integrate and implement gender and child-friendly practices and policy through educational plan, sharing among the schools and the government could generate more profound practices which could be implemented in all schools. And implementation of a short-term project to increase boys' awareness about traditional gender roles, equality and equity and coexistence in a society. Though indirect beneficiaries of this project, it would help in creating more positive outcomes to include boys in the project activities, and continuous community sensitization required to change the parents' attitude about decision making in decision making roles in the family. Involvement of joint decision making deemed better than where families are taking sole decision for the girls. And lastly, we conclude that Little Sister, Big Sister mentorship was the biggest accomplishment of this project. Big Sisters are the gurus, mentors, mediators, and the confidants for the Little Sisters. Girls attributed to their perceived learning improvement to the learning support classes and the age clubs together. Trained teachers brought about a significant amount of positive change in the school environment. parental awareness and engagement on girls' education has changed, but more space for project to continually engage to assure more positive outcomes. And local government appeared positive, but in most places they were not in loop with the project, hence unaware of certain project activities like the Edge Club. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Rupa. Stuart's inserted a comment to say that the VFM analysis is a helpful addition, and I agree with that, and thank you for doing it as an add-on piece. We don't have any other questions. So I think Atik and Ella are on the call. Ali is on the call as well. Do any of the participants have any questions or comments?
I have a question, Meros.
Go ahead, Stuart. Thank you.
Hi everyone. This is Stuart Johnson. In case we haven't met, we might have done, but in case we haven't, I'm the evaluation and learning lead for the fund manager. Thank you so much for that presentation. Really, really interesting, and thank you for all your efforts in producing the evaluation findings, particularly with all the difficulties around COVID. I'm sure it was an enormous challenge. So thank you, and it's really interesting findings. As just to reiterate, I thank you for adding in that VFM analysis. I think it brought things together really helpfully. And the way you presented it is a very straightforward way of doing it, but I really think it adds a real layer that wouldn't otherwise be there. So so thank you for doing that. I had a number of questions. I haven't got too long. I'll just pick out one. I was really interested about the finding that, you know, the learning improvements. You said, I think you said the main factor was around the mentoring provided by the big sisters, and also the support through the little sisters. I think that's what you said was the main factors. I just wonder whether you could say a little bit more about, you know, if you could unpick how does that work in practice? What is it about that the work of big sisters and the relationship with them that leads to improvements in academic learning? What did you find? What do you think is actually going on to cause that relationship?
Thank you for the comments and questions. Yes, big sisters do play a big role in the lives of the little sisters. Big sisters are often those ladies from among the communities who are well acquainted with the girls and their families and everyone in the community. So they're like monitors. Like say, instance, one girl she doesn't go to school regularly, and these big sisters are often given the task to check the attendance record at the school also. So they will be checking this attendance records weekly or monthly. So on the basis of that, they make inquiries with the little sisters and their families as to why the kid is not going to school, or what problems are the families facing of sending the school this girl to the school. So on the basis of that, the big sister can either communicate the information with the teachers if the girl is having a problem with her assignments, or is not being able to comprehend the lessons well at school. She can communicate this information to the teachers, and if she's having any problem at home, say the financial issues, like she doesn't have enough fund to buy a copy, or she does not have enough fund to attend any event at school, and then the big sister has a role to mediate this information to the adult champions, who are also part of the project, though they are not directly involved as much as the big sisters are. And in this course, the information is relayed on a stepwise to the project, and this is where the project supports these girls.
Just to add to what Rupa said, Stuart. So I was there in the Endline evaluation of Sister for Sister 1, and during the report drafting for this phase, I also had a thorough look at the transcripts. And one of the ways how big sisters have helped the little sisters in the first phase, and as well as in the second phase as well, I noticed, was a lot of times the little sisters, if they have some problems in their lesson, they tend to ask the big sisters. So big sisters are sort of guides for them, with whom you can talk about academics, you can talk about your life goals, you can talk about the problems you're having in life. or anything, I mean, a lot of things they spoke about with their big sisters. So in this course, if they had any problems in the lessons, they often talk to the big sisters, and the big sisters help them as well. And like Rupa said, if the big sisters noticed that they were having some trouble in school comprehending the lessons, they had access to the school, and they would often go to the school, speak to the teachers, head teachers, and tell them that, okay, so this girl is having a problem. Maybe you ought to focus on her more. So I think I would say a combination of activities from the big sisters has helped the little sisters' learning scores, the learning perception.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm getting the sense it's a kind of a combination of different factors, but that's really, really helpful to understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. That was a really good question. We have 4 more minutes. We can leave it there, or if there are any other questions, please let me know, or comments as well.
I have another one if no one else does.
Go ahead.
I was just picking up on what you're saying about the complaint referral mechanism, that essentially your conclusion was it didn't really work, at least in what you saw. I wonder what you thought the consequences were of that part of the program not working. Were there any obvious kind of consequences that you saw? And I guess just before completely dismissing it, did you see any cases where it was working well, any schools where it was working well? And if you did, I wondered why, if you could pinpoint why it was working in some schools but maybe not in others.
Like I said, we mostly witnessed dysfunctional cases where the complaint box were kept in the staff room. This may be because the schools were shut down for a long time, and then the focus of the school was more on the completing the course rather than other additional things at schools. And also one of the head teachers said, students do not really believe in going through the complaint referral mechanism because the box is open only once a month and among the committee members. And I think if any of the committee members are missing, they cannot actually go through the complaints made by the students. So that students rather go and complain to the head teachers directly rather than going through the mechanisms. During our field visit, we didn't really get to witness schools where the complaint referral mechanism were working, but in one of the treatment schools, we did see a complaint box that was placed on the staircases where the students could freely put in the complaints, unlike other places where the complaint box was placed right outside the teacher staff room where students would normally go with a complaint.
Thank you. So in terms of the consequences of it not working, because you said that students were more willing to go directly to the head teacher, and just thinking back to the previous answer, maybe the big sisters might have been another route. I mean, do you feel that there were consequences of it not working, or did the students find other ways of getting around the things that they might have put into those complaints boxes? Do you think they just found another mechanism, or do you think that there were some things that might have been brought up that they just weren't because that mechanism wasn't operating?
Maybe the students lost confidence. Maybe they had done made complaints through the boxes, through the mechanisms a couple of times before, and which had not worked. So that's why they had turned to directly speaking to the teachers, or they did share the issues with big sisters maybe. Other than that, we did not come across any during our field visits. We did not come across any major consequences other than that.
Just a quick add-on to Rupa's response. So Stuart, what we found is that like Rupa said, just to reiterate that a lot of them would directly actually go to the teachers or head teachers to sort of say that, okay, we're not happy with this. we want this to change. And this in itself is a huge change compared to earlier, where students would be scared to speak to with head teachers and teachers, I think we got this from one of the teachers saying that the girls are now confident about speaking to us and opening up about their problems. So I guess in one way, it's sort of we have stated that this complaint response mechanism is not working. It doesn't seem to have that effect. But on the other hand, due to the increased self-esteem, we have found that the girls are speaking up more and opening about their problems with their teachers, head teachers, and of course the little sisters have their own big sisters to open up as well. So in that way, I think a consequence, we saw the consequence in the in terms of direct opening up with the teachers and head teachers, I would say.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? It's kind of maybe more important to kind of deal with the underlying issue of the confidence to go through the mechanisms that were already open to them than creating a new mechanism. That's really interesting.
Just to add to that, and this was a very interesting finding, and this was picked up and shared with the safeguarding expert as well for the Nepal and Pakistan cluster. And then this is also sort of being brought into the discussions with the LNGB project. The reflections were also shared within the embassy event that was held in Nepal. And I think an interesting finding that came out, as you said, was that the complaint box was open once a week, so it wasn't very regular. So if it was something urgent, the girls would go to someone else in the school for the complaint. That was also quite an important finding around the mechanism.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, sorry, Mara, sorry, just a final touch, final response to that. I think, and a lot of, hesitance with using the complaint response mechanism is primarily, like Mara said, it's open very, in certain intervals. And at times when it's placed, for example, when our researchers went, like Rupa said, it was placed inside the staff room. And going inside the staff room just to, put forward their complaints in the box was something I think the girls felt a little hesitant to do, not because they were not confident or scared, but I mean that was just logistically not very feasible for them to do every time to go inside the staff room. So I think I would look at it that way rather than saying that the girls were not confident enough to use the CRM or anything as such.
Thanks, Abhijit. I think we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for the presentation and for all the questions as well. I thought this was a great discussion to follow up off the presentation. I'll just leave it here, and the recording will be available, and the slides will also be shared with the participants as well as others who had to attend or were interested and couldn't attend. Thanks all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melrose.
Thank you, Melrose.
Thank you, everyone.